The Star Wars sequel films have garnered some, let's just say, less than positive responses from some moviegoers. While The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi definitely have their fans, they also have their detractors. People who believe that the Skywalker saga should have gone in a much different direction than it has. Included among them, apparently, is George Lucas, the franchise's original creator. Wait. George Lucas himself is not happy with the films? What? How do we even know that? Well, dear viewer, after this video, all of your burning questions will be answered, including a little bit about how Lucas would have done it himself. The story surrounding the Star Wars sequel film starts way back in the ancient year of 2011, when George Lucas began meeting with Disney CEO Bob Iger, discussing his desire to sell Lucasfilm and the Star Wars franchise, so that he could finally retire and live that sweet life. After multiple meetings, Disney made a deal with Lucas and purchased Lucasfilm and all of its subsidiaries for a cool $4.05 billion, paid half in Disney stock and half in cash money. Along with the purchase of the company, Lucas also passed along his outlines for 3 Star Wars films, intended to follow up the original trilogy and continue the stories of Luke Skywalker and his compatriots. And since then, Lucas has been fairly quiet in regards to the sequel films that we wound up getting, not really giving any indication whether he thought positively or negatively of the stories they told. However, now that Bob Iger's memoir, The Ride of a Lifetime, is in readers' hands, we've gotten a bit of a glimpse into just how Lucas took the news that they wouldn't be using his outlines for episodes 7, 8, and 9. And boy, was it not all that pleasant. Iger wrote about the process of acquiring Lucasfilm and discussing the future of the Star Wars franchise with its creator, making it clear that while they appreciated having access to Lucas's outlines for a sequel trilogy, they were not necessarily going to stick to his original vision. Quote, "We made clear in the purchase agreement that we would not be contractually obligated to adhere to the plot lines he'd laid out. He knew that I was going to stand firm on the question of creative control, but it wasn't an easy thing for him to accept. So he reluctantly agreed to be available to consult with us at our request. I promised that we would be open to his ideas, but like the outlines, we would be under no obligation." So Lucas signed on to consult on the films, and a while later, Lucas and Iger met with Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy, screenwriter Michael Arndt, and J.J. Abrams to discuss the way they intended to go, i.e. not the direction that Lucas originally had planned. Iger wrote that, upon hearing the plan Abrams and crew intended to move forward with, Lucas became a bit upset, feeling betrayed and disappointed that they were going in a completely different direction. Iger expressed that he did his best to not mislead Lucas into thinking that they were definitely going to use his plot lines, but the creative differences were always going to be a difficult thing to overcome. He wrote, quote, "While this whole process would never have been easy for him, we'd gotten off to an unnecessarily rocky start." So what was the original plan for the films? While we don't know exactly what Lucas had planned, we do have a general idea, thanks to some info he provided during an interview with James Cameron. You know those midichlorian things? The little microscopic organisms that apparently either were the Force or allowed someone to connect to the Force? The whole thing was always a bit confusing, to be honest. Well, those little guys that had inspired so much fury among fans, as well as quite a few jokes, were meant to be a much bigger deal in the sequel trilogy. Lucas explained that his idea saw the story focusing on the smaller details that made the galaxy what it was, saying the film was going to, quote, "get into a microbiotic world. But there's this world of creatures that operate differently than we do. I call them the Wills. And the Wills are the ones who actually control the universe. They feed off the Force." The Wills! That elusive term that's been floating around the extended canon for decades at this point. Last referenced in Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. You know Chirrut Imwe and Baze Malbus? Those guys are called Guardians of the Wills. So the original plan for the sequels would have seen Lucas finally expanding upon the idea of the Wills, positioning them as sort of godlike super beings, controlling everything, which was apparently the idea behind them and the Force all along. Quote, "Back in the day, I used to say ultimately what this means is we were just cars, vehicles for the Wills to travel around. We're vessels for them. And the conduct is the midichlorians. The midichlorians are the ones that communicate with the Wills. The Wills, in a general sense, they are the Force." And episode 7 would have begun the journey towards understanding these ethereal cosmic beings, and would have seen Luke training a young girl named Kira on a remote planet. which, to Disney's credit, does actually sound fairly familiar to what we saw in The Last Jedi, with Rey training on Octo under Luke, although the context was a bit different, all things considered. So yeah, Lucas was not happy with the direction that Disney wanted to go, since it veered so strongly away from his original vision. Sort of leaves us here at ScreenRant a bit curious though. Now that 2 of the 3 films are out, what are his opinions on them? Does he like the final products, or is he still hanging on to the disappointment he felt those years ago? Maybe once Rise of the Skywalker's out in the wild, he'll let us know. Were you, like Lucas, disappointed with the direction that the sequel films took? What do you think of Lucas's original idea for episodes 7, 8, and 9? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below, and while you're down there, why not consider subscribing to ScreenRant for more awesome videos just like this in your feed each and every day. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.